welcome to a brand new episode of World at War. I'm your host, Jyotsna Kumar. On the 19th of June, Lebanese Health Ministry reported that at least 47 people were killed in southern Lebanon following a series of Israeli airstrikes overnight. The assault came barely a day after the United States and Iran signed an agreement aimed at ending the conflict in West Asia on all fronts, including in Lebanon. Israeli military said that 4 of its soldiers were also killed in one of the deadliest single incidents since the latest escalation began. Noteworthy is the fact that the escalation came a day after Israel published a map showing an expanded military control zone in southern Lebanon, further adding that it has not ruled out carrying out attacks beyond it. Israel's belligerence, despite the peace deal, has cast a shadow of doubt over the future of the peace deal between the United States and Iran. Our next report explores.
On the 2nd of March, 3 days into the US-Israeli war on Iran, the Lebanese militant and political group Hezbollah fired rockets at Israel in retaliation for the killing of Iran's then Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. It was the latest escalation in fighting in the decades-long conflict between Hezbollah and Israel. On the 16th of April, a 10-day ceasefire was announced after first direct talks between Lebanese and Israeli ambassadors in Washington in decades. In the subsequent days, both Hezbollah and Israel accused each other of violating the ceasefire agreement. The ceasefire was later extended on the 23rd of April by 3 weeks, giving rise to the possibility of a lasting peace in Lebanon. But the Israeli war machine has continued its march in southern Lebanon, ostensibly claiming that its actions are in response to what it describes as violations of the deal by Hezbollah. On the 17th of June, both the United States and Iran signed a deal aimed at ending the conflict in West Asia, including a permanent cessation of hostilities in Lebanon and for Lebanon's territorial integrity and sovereignty to be respected. This was in line with what the Iran's foreign minister had reiterated a day earlier.
This is perhaps the most important issue in the memorandum, the declaration of an immediate and permanent end to the war on all fronts, including in Lebanon. The important point I want to emphasize here is that in our view, there are 2 parties to this memorandum. One side is America and Israel, and the other side is Iran and Hezbollah.
After the United States and Iran released the text of an interim agreement signed by their presidents to end the war, the mood on the streets of Beirut was of cautious optimism.
God willing, we remain optimistic and hope that this agreement might become a positive initiative for Lebanon. A positive initiative for Lebanon and the Lebanese people through this agreement, and that there is credibility to what has been done and will be implemented fully by other countries, for them to have this credibility to support us in this situation in Lebanon. God willing, it will be good for everyone.
Israel is supposed to cease fire and also withdraw from the south. Now, whether Israel will commit, the United States should put pressure on it to commit. Because if Israel does not withdraw, then Hezbollah will not stop.
However, both Israel and Hezbollah have carried out strikes against each other since the agreement was announced. On the intervening night of the 18th and 19th of June, at least 18 people were killed, 33 were injured, and several buildings were hit across the Nabatieh district of southern Lebanon in one of the most intense Israeli bombardments. Our correspondent, Ghadi Francis, sent us this ground report following Israeli strikes.
Every building in Beirut's Dahi, or the southern suburb of Beirut, every building holds maybe not less than 12 families, and every family on the average of 5 people. And you can count and list tens of buildings in southern suburb, and you can count and list tens of buildings across South Lebanon. All this has happened in the past few months and in the past few years. Israel has struck relentlessly all shapes of targets in Lebanon under the banner that it is fighting Hezbollah. Hezbollah, on the other side, was under a ceasefire for 15 months, restarted the war zone in the past 3 months, and is still ongoing. While the clashes continue in South Lebanon, each party says you must stop first. But in general, there is occupied Lebanese land, and the people that are being targeted in Lebanon are mostly families. This is why Lebanon awaits what might this US-Iran deal actually bring to their lives, and would the destiny of more than 1.5 million Lebanese people who have been displaced be finally known.
Israeli Defense Forces claimed that it had struck 80 targets linked to Hezbollah and killed dozens of its members, and that the strikes were carried out in response to the repeated ceasefire violations by the Iran-backed group. Hezbollah said that its fighters ambushed an Israeli force advancing near Ali al-Taher Hill in southern Lebanon, destroyed 3 Merkava tanks with guided missiles, and targeted troops with rocket and artillery fire. It is to be noted that Israel has said it has no intention of withdrawing its forces from Lebanon, and has insisted that its conflict with Hezbollah is separate from the war on Iran. According to Lebanon's health ministry, since the latest conflict began on the 2nd of March, at least 3,912 people have been killed in Lebanon, including women and children, and a further 11,699 others have been wounded. In addition to this, around 1 million people remain displaced, while dozens of communities in the south have been completely destroyed. Noteworthy is the fact that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is under domestic pressure to continue military operations against the armed group. His far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir too said, following the deaths of the 4 soldiers, that all of Lebanon must burn. The sharp rhetoric and the escalation in hostilities has given rise to questions about the future of the truce between the United States and Iran.
On the 18th of June, Ukraine launched its largest drone attack on Moscow since the start of the full-scale war, sparking fires, hitting a major oil refinery and forcing evacuations at the country's largest airport. Close to 200 drones were fired towards the Russian capital, in which at least 17 people were wounded. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the attack was an absolutely justified response to deadly strikes on Kiev, further adding that he wanted Russians to put pressure on Vladimir Putin for the consequences of Europe's worst conflict since World War II. A day after, Russia renewed its strikes on Ukraine, killing 3 people, including an 8-year-old girl. In recent weeks, both sides have escalated attacks on each other as US-led talks on bringing an end to the more than 4-year-long conflict remains effectively frozen. Our next report brings you the details.
The Russia-Ukraine war, which is Europe's biggest conflict since World War II and is well into its 5th year, isn't exhibiting any signs of coming to an end anytime soon. Tens of thousands of civilians have been killed and millions have been uprooted from their homes. As Kyiv has developed its long-range capabilities, drone attacks on Moscow, about 500 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, have become more frequent. On Thursday, Ukraine launched its largest drone attack on Moscow, hitting the Kapotnya refinery in southeast Moscow for the 3rd time in a month, and the 2nd time this week. A nearby shopping center also caught fire, reportedly after drone debris fell on the building. According to local governor Andriy Vorobyov, columns of thick smoke billowed high into the sky and 17 people were wounded in the Moscow region. Such was the impact of the unprecedented attack that Moscow's 4 airports were temporarily shut and more than 500 flights were cancelled or delayed. Russia's defense ministry claimed to have intercepted almost 1,000 drones and 4 Ukrainian cruise missiles across the country within 24 hours. And Sergei Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister, vowed that Moscow would retaliate with its own massive strikes on Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky didn't mince his words and called the attack an absolutely justified response to deadly strikes on Kyiv, including one on a landmark cathedral and a UNESCO-protected 11th century monastery.
So that Russia feels there's no point in waging war. The main thing is for the Russian people to start realizing that, frankly speaking, it's just one man, Putin, who's waging this war, while the people are the ones paying the price. And that's why, in my view, we all need to put pressure on Putin. Every single Ukrainian needs to apply pressure, and it's time for Europeans, Americans, and Russians to wake up to reality. We do not want this war, and never have. Everyone knows this, and our partners know this. And we certainly do not want Ukraine to be engulfed in flames because of the enemy. But if Ukraine is engulfed in flames, so too will your Moscow be. That is why we emphasize once again that it is time to end the aggression. It is time to end this war.
The strike on the Kepotnia refinery engulfed the Russian capital in black smoke. An unthinkable scenario when Moscow launched its full-scale offensive against Ukraine in 2022. But an undeniable reality in recent months. Bracing for more Ukrainian attacks and possible petrol shortages, the anxious Russians are getting used to a new, unpleasant reality.
It was really scary, to be honest. And yes, the anxiety still hasn't gone away. I'm shaking. Of course, I'm sleeping badly. Not sleeping at all, really. So this is my face. No makeup, tired. And it's just a reflection of the current reality. Things are very bad. I just want peace to come as soon as possible. And for this not to be happening. It's terrifying.
We need to get used to the fact that this can basically happen anywhere, with everyone. And I think we just need to be, more focused, in my opinion.
In retaliation, between late Thursday and early Friday, Russia launched 90 drones at Ukraine, according to the Ukrainian Air Force. The defiant Russian President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly rejected an offer from Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky for direct talks, and has instead vowed to achieve Russia's war aims on the battlefield. The world's attention has been fixated on the conflict in West Asia, resulting in a lull in the peace process. Volodymyr Zelensky seems to have fairly succeeded in his aim of bringing the war home to ordinary Russians. The question is, will these long-range strikes bring about a change in President Putin's approach towards ending this war?
For weeks, Albanians have been protesting against a planned luxury resort backed by a company linked to Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of U.S. President Donald Trump. The estimated $4.6 billion luxury resort development, slated for construction in a protected area on the country's Adriatic coast, poses a risk to the environment and to nearby lagoon critical to migrating birds. In a bid to placate the protesters, the government has claimed that the development on the Adriatic coast would be transformational for the former communist nation, but to no avail. Our next report brings you the details.
The Republic of Albania is in the throes of a major upheaval. In recent weeks, thousands of protesters have taken to the streets of the capital, Tirana, protesting against a planned luxury resort connected to U.S. President Donald Trump's daughter, Ivanka Trump, and her husband, Jared Kushner. The proposed luxury resort is near Vlora, famous for its flamingos and turtle nesting site.
This project is threatening the whole ecosystem of the Delta. This is a project that was possible just because there was the change of the law on protected areas in 2024. And the strategic investment project, which opens the way to this kind of developments in protected areas.
The Vjosa Delta is the very last living delta of whole Mediterranean, including France, Spain, Italy, Africa side. And what they are planning with the Kushner project, and they're planning more. Kushner is just the start. would completely destroy the whole delta. You know, they're building villas, harbors, yachts, golf courses, you know, everything, you know, and flamingos don't play golf.
Additionally, plans are afoot to transform the uninhabited island of Sazan, once a secret communist military base, into a glitzy tourist destination. It is to be noted that the former communist nation seeks to enter the high-end tourism market and is pushing for European Union membership. On the 17th of June, in the latest of these demonstrations, thousands of protesters, blowing whistles, holding up cardboard cutouts of flamingos and banners, marched through Tirana, chanting "Narta is ours" and cancelled the project. The protesters also called for Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama's resignation. The unrest first broke out during a small protest in Zvernik in late May, after workers installed barbed wire to cordon off part of the nature reserve earmarked for the project. Videos of bulldozers on the beach and violent confrontations with private security quickly went viral, drawing public outcry, as protesters continue to gather in large numbers, frustrated at perceived corruption in the Balkan nation. The unrest is a throwback to the unruly days of the 1990s, when Albania's communist government fell. The socialist Prime Minister Edi Rama, in power for nearly 13 years, has vowed not to step back from the development and defended his administration's environmental record. Adding insult to injury, he has claimed that the protests were being encouraged by malicious cyber activists overseas, and has even accused Iran of targeting his government. On the 12th of June, during a rally for his Socialist Party, Edi Rama had once again defended the luxury real estate project.
What we want to do with this investment is not to create a new company, a new seaside resort, but to add a jewel to the crown of the Mediterranean in the name of the Republic of Albania.
Noteworthy is the fact that despite Edi Rama's defense of the development, the protests have gathered pace, with supporters in Albanian communities in neighboring Greece and other European countries also holding rallies. The writing, it seems, is on the wall. Will Prime Minister Edi Rama gauge the mood of the nation and step back from the controversial luxury resort?
On the 18th of June, at least 11 soldiers and 2 civilians were killed in an attack on the airport of Niger's capital, Niamey, by the Al-Qaeda-linked Jihadists. Reportedly, gunfire erupted early in the morning and rang out for hours near the airport, where a large military presence was later deployed, according to the residents. Niger's defense ministry claimed that 22 attackers were also killed as security forces repelled the raid on the Diori Hamani International Airport. Niger and its fellow junta-ruled allies in West Africa, Burkina Faso and Mali have faced a decade of violence attributed to jihadists. Our next report brings you the details.
Niger, the landlocked West African nation, has been led by a military junta since a 2023 coup. But the Sahel nation has struggled to contain deadly jihadist violence. Early on Thursday, at around 6 a.m. local time, an Al-Qaeda affiliate, Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, or JNIM, launched a suicide attack on capital Niamey's main airport and on a neighboring military base. Reportedly, the assailants arrived at the security checkpoint by taxi, where they encountered fierce resistance from security forces.
The swift response of the defense and security forces made it possible to neutralize the assailants before they reached the terminal building. The provisional toll of this treacherous attempted incursion is as follows. On our side, 13 martyrs, including 11 members of the defense and security forces, and 2 civilians and 4 wounded. On the enemy side, 22 assailants neutralized, around 20 suspects apprehended.
The attack was the second on the airport complex this year and lasted for over 2 hours. According to the Defense Ministry, some of the attackers dispersed in the surrounding neighborhoods, where the security forces are carrying out vast sweeps, aided by locals, to hunt down the assailants. The ministry also claims that the international airport, which is fully secure, remains open to air traffic. Later the same day, the JNIM claimed the attack in a statement published via its official media arm, the Az-Zalaka Foundation. Our correspondent Louisa Olaniyi sent us this ground report in the aftermath of the attack.
The Niger Defense Ministry said the armed forces killed 22 jihadists and captured 20 in an attempted attack on the capital's airport on Thursday, while 11 security personnel and 2 civilians died. The Islamic State-linked JNIM claimed responsibility for the attack, making a second attack on the airport this year. The first was by Islamic State Sahel province in January. The growing confidence and ruthlessness of jihadists is worrisome to analysts.
Thursday's attack was the second on the airport complex this year after the region's Islamic State affiliate known as Islamic State Sahel Province or ISSP targeted the sensitive site on 29th of January. Nigerian armed forces and their Russian allies had repelled that attack in which 20 assailants were killed and 4 soldiers were wounded. Niger has regularly accused its former colonial power France of financing jihadists to destabilize the country, an accusation Paris denies. Thursday's attack, condemned by both the European Union and the African Union, has once again highlighted that the security measures taken have not been effective so far. And the head of Niger's junta, who is the current president, Abdurrahmane Tiani, has his task cut out.
And that's all we could pack into this episode of World at War. Thanks for watching.